we apply knowledge in a really distinct and collaborative environment. We practice our leadership intentionally, and our goal is to help you develop your wise leadership by developing and practicing certain qualities of wise leadership, which are really important, and that is confident humility, empathy, and judgment. It's really important that you understand what you know and what you don't know, that you're able to think across perspectives and work across differences, and that you take risks for the better, and are confident in exercising judgments to take the right risks. So we've designed our entire application around that. Now, the first thing I want to do before we dive into our criteria is we have a little poll. So I'm going to ask that we launch that poll right now, and we'll give you a minute to answer. All right, terrific. So as I said, we've designed our application to give us an idea of how these qualities of wise leadership and these criteria interact with you, and how you'll engage with and contribute to the Tuck community and the Tuck fabric. So one of the things that we have done is we've looked at our criteria for admission, and we have talked about you're a strong candidate for Tuck if you're smart, you're nice, accomplished, and aware. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to go through each one of those so you have a good sense of what that means. And the very first thing is you're smart. Smart means, yes, it means your academics and your test scores, but it's more than just that. It's the willingness to challenge yourself, to be curious about the world, to have the confident humility, as I mentioned, to know what you know and to share that, but also to know what you don't know, and to be willing to ask questions and to learn and to stretch yourself beyond what you know right now. Being willing to share your experience, your knowledge, and your questions is a really important piece of that. You're also a strong candidate for Tuck if you are nice. Now, I do want to, we've had a little bit of conversation about this, both internally and externally outside of Tuck. It's certainly something that people react to very strongly. And one of the things that's important here is when we talk about nice, we don't mean that you're a pushover. We don't mean that you stand quietly by and let things happen because that's nice. What we mean is that you have a habit of kindness. You encourage and you support others. You challenge others respectfully and thoughtfully, and you show empathy, another one of those qualities of wise leadership. You show empathy for the experience of others, and you think about things from others' perspectives. You are principled and you have integrity, and you also recognize that you can't do this alone all the time. You are interdependent and you build relationships, and that is what we're looking for when we talk about smart. Next, you are a strong candidate to Tuck if you are accomplished. And here we're going to look at your professional history, but we're also going to look at your community engagement and your personal history and personal achievement. Really what we're looking for is what's your impact? How have you enriched the organizations and communities and the people around you? Your performance matters, but also your work ethic matters. And it's not about results alone. It is about results earned the right way. And that means that your judgment is important, that you take risks and you act for the better of others. And finally, you're a strong candidate for Tuck if you're aware. And what do we mean by that? We mean you need to reflect, and it should at least be happening in the application process. Hopefully you've been reflecting throughout your career about what you're looking for. What are your values? What are the experiences that you have to share? And where's the path ahead for you? Where do you need to go? And how have these things shaped you and helped develop your story? So you need to know what those are so you can articulate and share them, not just with us in the admissions process, but also in our community, also in the classroom, with faculty, with your study group members, with your network, and beyond. And so that awareness is important. One of the things that's really important, I mentioned this already, is that you have a vision of where you want to go. You have an idea of your goals, and you have an idea of how an MBA and TUC may fit into those goals. So you can think about how you might enrich the TUC community, and also how the TUC community and the TUC experience might enrich you. So those are the things that we're looking for. You will see that they are new criteria, but really it is the same great students. We've really just streamlined what we've been looking for before. And that's an important piece of what we do. So the next thing that's changed is we have changed our rounds and our deadlines a little bit. And I want to talk about those. So we have now 3 rounds instead of 4. If you are familiar with us in past years, we've had 4. Our round 1 and round 1 consortium are in September and October, and those decisions will come out in December. Then there's round 2 consortium and round 2 considered together again, and those deadlines are in January and decisions come out in the spring. And then round 3 in April. Now, we have new deadlines. However, what's important is that there are 3 applications rounds, but the rule still applies that you apply as early as you can submit a strong application. Remember that submitting a weak application in the first round is not going to benefit you. If you're ready in the first round with a strong application, I strongly encourage you to apply then. However, if you're not ready in round 1 or round 2, apply in round 3. Or if you're not ready in round 1, apply in round 2 with that strong application. It is a competitive process, and you want to put your best foot forward from the beginning. Okay. We have another poll that I'm going to ask that we launch at the moment. We'll give you some time to answer that poll. All right, terrific, thank you. So now I've told you what we're looking for, and let's take the mystery out of it. Where do we find those criteria? Where do we look for those things? And that's what we're going to talk about next. So there's definitely different parts to the application process, and we'll look at those. Hold on, I'm trying to find my cursor. There it is. And so the first part is the application form in and of itself. This is important information. Fill it out completely. And one of the things I've noticed over the years is sometimes people kind of give this a little less attention, and they don't proofread this process, or they don't fill this part of the process, and they don't fill everything in appropriately. This is important information. We wouldn't ask it if we didn't want to have the answers. So please fill it out. Please treat this as an important part of the process, as much as your essay or your resume or your interview. All of this will show us what kind of applicant and what kind of student you're going to be. So please pay attention to the application form itself. Next, we have academics and test scores. Now, academics and test scores are going to help us understand, can you succeed in a rigorous curriculum? Obviously, we're going to look at how have you done at school, but it's all looked in context. So it's not just what was your GPA, it's also what was your trajectory. Maybe you started low and you went high. Maybe you had a down semester, a down term. Maybe you were in an incredibly difficult program, or you had outside things going on during your academic years. So we're going to look at you in context, and remember that it's not just the number, but we are going to look at the whole picture. We're also going to look at your test scores. So you are required to submit a valid GMAT or GRE. We would like to see all the valid scores that you have, but we will only consider your highest. And the reason we want to see all of them is we want to see the history. How did you get to that highest point? it's very competitive. So aim for your best scores. Now, once you've hit your best scores, though, move on. Or once you've hit that point of where you feel you have put in enough time and energy, move on to the rest of the application itself. So we're going to look at that. Again, it's competitive, aim for your best scores. And then if you're a non-native English speaker, it is required that you submit demonstrate your English proficiency through either the TOEFL or another test of English proficiency, unless you qualify for a waiver. And if you're curious about what the waiver qualifications are, you can find that in the FAQs on our website, or certainly reach out to us. We would be happy to answer a question for you. Okay. Next, we have resume and work history. We want to see your work, what impact you've had, and your progression. And this gets to the accomplishment part, or the accomplished part of the criteria. We want to see, what have you done? How have you enriched the communities around you? What have you done at work? Quality in your work experience is more important than quantity. Some people are ready after 2 years of work experience. Some people aren't ready after 10. And so it's really important that you show us that impact, that contribution and legacy. No one industry is more important than another. We are very interested in having a diverse classroom where people can learn from each other and each other's experiences. And we know our students and our alumni go out into a wide range of industries and organizations when they graduate. And so that diversity in the classroom helps enrich the academic environment. So don't worry about it if you feel like you're in a non-traditional industry. Tell us your story and what you've done and how you've contributed. Now, on your resume, you're going to have other relevant information on your resume as well. You might have, you're certainly going to have your education. I should note that we would really prefer to see a one-page resume, and some people have trouble trying to figure out, what do I need to cut? Keep in mind that we want to see things usually from your undergraduate years and up, nothing before your undergraduate years, unless you have something significant, such as you had significant work experience or a significant experience that is important to list. Otherwise, we want to see undergraduate and up. Okay. And we also want to see your accomplishments in your involvement and the achievements that you've had personally. And so that's going to be a part of the application form. It might be on your resume as well. You may talk about it in your interviews. But we want to see what you've done outside of work. And that gives us a sense of how you'll be involved outside of the classroom at Tuck. And so that's an important piece. We want to see, how will you contribute to the Tuck fabric, and what's your impact going to be? Next, we look at your essays. Essays are an important piece of you telling your story. And in your telling of your story, we're going to get to the nice quality, the aware quality, but we're also going to see a little bit of smart and accomplished. So the essays give us a little bit of everything, but really we're going to see a lot of that habit of kindness, that encouragement and support, that respectful challenge, that embracing of others' perspectives. And your essays are an important piece of that. Spend time on your essays. Make sure that you're answering our questions. Or for other schools, make sure you're really addressing the questions that you are asked. It's really important that you address the question directly. It's also important that you speak in your own voice, making sure that you're sharing your story in your unique voice and not trying to be who you think we want you to be. So think about what your vision is, what your path is, and how it's going to intersect with others. And the essays are one way that we get to see those qualities of nice and aware. Then we have letters of reference. Now, this is the one piece of your application that is a little bit more objective. It's nothing that you touch, but you do influence. It's an outside view of you. And the influence you have over your letters of reference is, first of all, who did you ask to do your letters of reference? Be thoughtful about who you ask. We are not interested in somebody with a high title or rank. We are looking for someone who knows you well, who can have a big picture perspective on you. Ideally a current supervisor, but if it's not going to be a current supervisor, it's certainly possible to pick a past supervisor or someone else who might have another perspective on you. Be thoughtful about this. And if you don't choose a current supervisor or have some concern that we need to understand who you chose, use your optional essay to explain very briefly this is who I chose for my recommendations, and this is why I was unable to choose my current supervisor. We understand that sometimes there are very good reasons why your current supervisor can't do that letter of reference, but let us know so we don't wonder. Now, your letters of reference will comment on, and your recommenders are asked to comment on all of the qualities: smart, nice, accomplished, and aware. We want to hear about their perspective on how you operate. And so it's great when you ask someone if they can do your recommendations. Sit down and ask them, are they able to comment positively on you, and do they have the time? Because it is an investment of time on their part as well. Thank them profusely, give them enough time to do the letter of recommendation or letter of reference, and help jog their memory on some of the things that you've done, the path that you've traveled, the development that you've had, and maybe some examples that show some of the things that you think are relevant to those qualities that we've talked about, to help jog their memory. I wouldn't leave them with something written down so they're not tempted in they're in a hurry. They just, oh, you said it so well, I'll just kind of use that in my recommendation. We really want it to be in their voice as well. So as I said, be thoughtful about who chooses your recommendations or who you choose for your recommendations and references. They are an important piece of your application as well, and show us a lot about you. Now, the final thing is interviews. And the interviews, again, are an opportunity for you to tell your story in your voice, sharing with us your unique path and what you have to contribute to Tuck and beyond. We are going to get all of those qualities again here. Nice and aware certainly are important, but we're also going to see smart and accomplished. This is an opportunity for you to tell your story, so take advantage of something that's unique at Tuck, where we do offer you the opportunity to self-initiate an interview. You can only do that if you visit us at Tuck. We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us, but it's an opportunity for you to do that if you are applying this year. So if you're applying this year, pay attention to the interview deadlines for the rounds in which you're applying. They are separate from the application deadlines. You can sign up now. We have interviews for the fall term already up online. They do go quickly, so I encourage you to sign up quickly as well. And then realize that this is an opportunity for you to tell your story, but if you can't come to campus, you're not shut out. You can submit your application, and then we will review it and may decide that we want to invite you to interview. But the only way to guarantee you that interview is to come to campus and self-initiate the interview. So if you can, please do. An interview is not required to apply. I should also mention that. However, in practice, we do not admit anyone without an interview. So that's an important piece that you need to remember. And the final thing I'll say about interviews is it is not something you can redo. So practice, get practice telling your story. Talk to people. Think about all those points of reflection that you should in an interview, because this is your chance to really sell yourself in person as opposed to on paper and in an application. Okay, so we're going to relaunch, before we go into the end here, I'd like to relaunch one of our polls. So we're going to relaunch our second poll, and I'm going to give you a minute to answer, and then we'll move forward. Okay. So one of the things I want to highlight is remember that you are more than the sum of all these parts. You're not just one thing, and we will look at the totality of who you are. We're going to put everything in context together. It is a very competitive process, so put your best foot forward in every piece of it that you can, but don't sweat it. Ask us questions if you have questions. Remember that we are looking for a diverse class with a variety of different backgrounds. We want unique perspectives and experiences in our classroom and in our community. All of that contributes to that fabric of Tuck that we talk about. be yourself, reflect, get to know us better, attend one of our events when we're around the world or more online events, or come visit us here in Hanover. We'd love to see you. Check us out online. We have a wealth of information on our website as well. And we also want to get to your questions. So we're going to turn it over to questions now and get started with that. So let me see what questions we have in chat here. Great. Okay, so we have some questions on GMAT standards. Is there a minimum? There is no minimum for GMAT. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. There's no minimum. There's no minimum for GRE either. Do recognize that there is an average, and so this year it'll probably run somewhere around 722, which is where it was last year as well. That was just in posts and quants, so I feel confident on that. What I would say is that if you feel that you're below the average, then you're going to want to think whether or not that's the best you can do. If you feel that you can do better, don't be shy about taking it again. If you feel that's the best you can do and you want to move forward with the rest of your application, please do. Know that we're going to look at that GMAT or GRE in context with your academics, because what's that telling us? It's telling us whether or not you can perform in the classroom. So there's more than just the standardized test. That being said, as I said, it's a competitive process. You definitely want to do the very best that you can. So another question we have is on, are there any tips or guidelines for reapplicants applying through the consortium? So if you're applying through the consortium as a reapplicant, that's totally fine. We've had that happen year after year, and that's absolutely fine. In general, if you're a reapplicant, realize that while we will have your old application in front of us, you should fill out the application, the new application, as completely as you can, assuming that we will not be going to the old application to get information. What we will be looking for is there continuity? Are there differences? Is there more information in there that we missed last year? Some of those things, okay? So as a reapplicant, you do want to think about that. Other tips for reapplicants is really think about what is it that you've done over the past year. You have a reapplicant essay to do that asks you this question. What have you done to enhance your application? What's been the difference? So think about that and share, and be critical about your application from the year before. What would you like to do better? What are the things that you would prefer to do? So we have our third poll that's launched. So you can answer that for a minute, and I will scroll through questions while we're looking at that, and we'll move forward. So I'll give you just a minute, and then we'll start on the next question. Okay, so we have another question on what advice would you give to reapplicants, which we just covered a little bit of, but the specific question is, if a reapplicant switches exams, how does that get measured? Well, remember, whether it's the GRE or the GMAT, we are still looking for the most competitive score that you can give us. We're going to look to see, can you succeed in the curriculum? Now, if you're trying to compare GMAT to GRE, we currently don't publish our average GRE simply because we don't have a strong enough sample size to give you some good data on that. But if you want to do a comparison for yourself, there's a conversion tool, GRE to GMAT, to give you a sense of what your GRE or what your GMAT might be with your performance in the GRE. So you can use that to give you a sense of it. It's not a perfect tool. It's certainly something that it can give you at least an idea. And again, if that conversion tool is telling you where you are in relation to our average, that can give you a sense of how competitive you might be. Think about that, and then think about what the rest of your academics and other parts of your application are telling us about your ability to succeed in the curriculum. Okay. So the next question, do you only look at applications after each round's deadline? So we consider all applications together. You do not need to submit your application if the deadline is, I think, September 27th. So let me look that up while I'm talking to you. So if the deadline is, I'm sorry, September 24th. So the deadline is September 24th. If you submit on September 18th or September 24th, you get the same consideration. It doesn't do you any advantage to submit on the 18th besides getting it out of the way. Just do it by our deadline and the end of our deadline, or you will be in the next round. So we may start reading some applications beforehand if they come in earlier, but not significantly so, and you gain no advantage from submitting them early, and there's no disadvantage to submitting them on the deadline. As long as your application is complete, we will look at them. Okay, so next question. Do volunteer or other activities help on your resume? Well, if they're important to you, it can help us understand who you are. Don't go padding your resume with things to do because you think we're looking for those. Be yourself. What we want to do is see how you spend your time. Sometimes it's you're really involved at work and you're spending 100 hours a week doing some really amazing things at work, and that's fine. It sometimes is you have a significant involvement outside of work in your community or in your a volunteer experience that you're doing or in a sports experience or something like that. That's all fine too. Do not feel like you have to have activities. What we want you to do is to share information with us about who you are, and that's the piece that we get out of your involvement outside of work. Don't pad your resume. So what's our biggest strength against other business schools? Well, I'm not going to talk about other business schools because that's really something you're going to look for yourself. But what I can tell you is what we do really well. What we do really well is that we give you an immersive experience in a very personal scale to our school. And what does that mean? It means you'll get to know everybody, and this will be an experience where you can really, really focus in on the MBA program, your education and growth, and know that the people around you are focused on the same thing. We don't dilute your experience with other degrees and lots of other people competing for resources. These resources belong to our MBA students in both classes. And then our other strength, I would say, is this incredibly immersive experience leads to an incredibly tight-knit alumni network. And that alumni network gives benefits for a lifetime, and you are part of it, and you're committed to it for a lifetime. And you carry that with you. And so it can mean great things in terms of career and personal connection, in terms of generating ideas. Sometimes it can mean great things. There was a question specifically for entrepreneurship. It can mean great things if you want to start a business. The wealth of resources in our alumni network, people who've started businesses, have advice and suggestions to share, can serve as mentors and idea generators with you, is great. There's also a lot of resources here at Tuck during your 2 years for entrepreneurship. We have a Center for Entrepreneurship, which can provide a great pathway for you in thinking through entrepreneurial ideas. We have incubator resources and money. We have the center provides an opportunity for you to test your entrepreneurial ideas. The first year project, which all students do, you have an opportunity to submit your entrepreneurship idea or work on a friend's entrepreneurial idea, a classmate's entrepreneurial idea as part of a first year project if you choose to. And one of the great things about our first year project is you choose the team and the project that you're working on. So if that's what you want to do, you can. We've had people who've done independent studies working on entrepreneurial ideas. And in fact, if you go to our website, you can see a story about Zippity, which was a first-year entrepreneurial project, which 2 of our students worked on in their second year as well, and has been launched. It's been out for a year now. They're expanding into the Boston region and hope to expand beyond. And so that's a great story about a first-year project that was entrepreneurial, that expanded using many of the resources at Tuck for entrepreneurship. Okay, so there's a question also on the short response section. What do you recommend focusing on for your short-term and long-term goals? Okay, I'm going to be short here. I recommend you focus on what your short-term and long-term goals are. So thinking about what is your career goal? What do you want to do? It is specifically limited because we don't want you to write an essay here. We want to know what is it that you plan to do short-term and what is it that you plan to do long-term. So there was also a question about the activities and awards section. If it's on the resume, can you repeat the items in the application? Yes, you can. And hopefully what you'll find is, because you're limited to a page for your resume, hopefully you'll find that in the activities and awards section of the application, you can go into a little bit more detail about what did that activity really entail, or what was that award for. And sometimes the titles of the groups that you worked in or the award isn't fully descriptive and doesn't tell us a whole lot. Okay, so the next question, military applicants. And also consortium applicants, what advantages, disadvantages do they get? Well, I would say you have the same advantages. Let me phrase that in a different way, but everyone's got advantages and disadvantages. You all bring something to the table that's unique because of your background and your experience. And so you want to think about what's unique to you. Specifically as a military applicant, if you are a U.S. military active duty or veteran, you are able to apply, and we waive your application fee. The consortium applicants, they get the advantage of, if you are admitted to the consortium, you get the advantage of consortium membership, which has a great network and great opportunities and programs. You also, it's a little bit like the Common App, you can apply to all consortium member schools. Well, you can apply to 6 consortium member schools through the same application process, so that's an advantage as well. Beyond that, you still have the same job, but you still need to tell your story and show us that you have been thoughtful and reflective about what you bring and what you will add to the Tuck fabric and to the Tuck community. Okay, interviews, next question, or next several questions. So when do you schedule and how do you schedule your interviews? Great question. You should schedule your interview, one, when you can make it. And you can go online to our website under a visit, plan a visit, or Visit Tuck. I can't remember the exact wording, but you should be able to see it under MBA admissions. You'll see Visit Tuck or plan a visit, and then you can click on the link and see what the schedule is and what's available in terms of when you can sign up. There are deadlines for each application round for interviews, and they are separate from the application deadlines. So for example, September 24th is the round 1 deadline for regular applications. The deadline to interview for round 1, if you are doing a self-initiated interview, an applicant-initiated interview, that deadline is not until the end of October. So you have time. Now, when do you want to schedule that interview? You can schedule it before the application deadline. You can schedule it after the application deadline, as long as it's before the interview deadline. Some people find it's advantageous to visit before the application deadline, and then they can add context and information to their essays and to their application before they submit it. Sometimes you just can't travel then, and that's okay too. It's not going to hurt you if you can't do your interview before the application deadline. Again, as long as it's before the interview deadline. If you conduct your interview after the deadline, does the process change? It does not change from your end. Your interview becomes part of the process. I should tell you what happens when you submit your application. When you submit your application, if you have interviewed prior to submission, your application is read fully with the interview both times. If you are planning to interview, self-initiate an interview after you submit your application, we will wait to read your application until your interview write-up comes in. There's no problem with that. There is no disadvantage to you to that happening. There's no advantage to being read early or later in the process. So we do pay attention to that. If you do not plan to self-initiate an interview, you can't come, it's not possible, you're coming from a long distance, you're slammed at work, whatever it might be, you would submit your application. The first reader would read it and then make an interview recommendation. And then if they recommend yes, interview, you'll be invited to interview. If they don't recommend an interview, it will go to our director of admissions, who reviews every application. And he's kind of the one who kind of calibrates everything together. And he may decide to invite you to interview. So there, again, you're always going to be put into context, and then your second read would then be with the interview. How do we interview international students is another question. So if you can come to campus, great, but we also know that for some international students, it's quite a distance. If you are invited to interview, you can come to campus. You can, some of our students or some of our staff travel globally, and will have an opportunity to interview with them when they travel. Or you can interview virtually through Skype or Google Hangouts or some other easily accessible form of virtual interview. And that is, to a certain extent, your choice. The only thing that you aren't able to choose is when our staff travels to do their interviews. But if you're available when they are traveling, then you can select that as well. Okay, so the next question. I'm not sure I understand this. Tuck advantages for working internationally post-MBA. So I'm going to assume what this question is really getting to is how does Tuck help students who want to work internationally after their MBA? I hope that gets to the heart of what the question is. Okay, so I mentioned the alumni network. One of the things that I think is so amazing about Tuck is the incredible willingness of the alumni network to help, and they are international. They are all around the world. And so when you are looking for opportunities or information, you can reach an alum whether they are in New York City or in London or in Tokyo or in Mumbai, and have an opportunity to talk with them. You have an opportunity to gain their perspective on what you're looking for. And those are great opportunities. We have students working around the world. We have opportunities working around the world. Our career coaches do a great job of getting to know you personally and helping you find the resources that are available to you. There are certainly some employers who come on campus to do recruiting who are looking for people who can work internationally. We have alums who are working for McKinsey in London. We have alums who are working for Samsung Global Strategies Group in Seoul, South Korea. We have alums working in, and I'm talking about students walking straight out of their MBA, who are working down in South America in various organizations. So there's lots of different opportunities. The career coaches do a great job at the Career Development Office of getting to know you and working with you. The Alumni Network is another great opportunity to find out what information you need and where opportunities might be to start to understand the landscape in the international location you're looking for. The other thing I would say is the Tuck Go requirement, which is a global opportunities requirement. Everyone is required during their time at Tuck to take at least a 1 credit course, some of them are more, to spend time in a region or a country with which they're not familiar, learning how they do business there. And there's a couple different options, or 4 different options on how you fulfill your Tuck Go requirement. But what that means is when you graduate from Tuck, you've had an opportunity to immerse yourself in other cultures, and you understand how you can work across cultures as well. And I think that's an advantage as well. Now, so there's a question on, are there Tuck strengths in certain industries? Tuckies work in industries all around the world and across the spectrum. We certainly see a lot of students who go into consulting, but we were just talking about this the other day, consulting's a broad a broad descriptor. We have alums who go straight into healthcare consulting, some who go into strategy consulting on a general scale, some who are working in energy consulting. So when you see, if you go to our website, you can see the career statistics. When you see that, remember when you see consulting or finance, investment banking, there's a lot of different areas you could be working in. We have people who are working in energy finance and healthcare finance. We have a lot of different things that we're looking at. So I've mentioned a couple of times, I've mentioned at least once a little bit about our centers, I think. Our research centers, which include the Center for Healthcare, the Revers Center for Energy, the Center for Business, Government, and Society, the Center for Digital Strategies, and then there's others as well. These give you an opportunity to follow different pathways. So if you're interested in an area that maybe doesn't do a ton of recruiting on campus, that alumni network is available to you, but also the centers can offer great pathways and links into those industries that you're interested in. And you can get as involved as you want in the centers. You can either go to every single event that you possibly can from the time you walk on campus to in your second year you decide to, you want to see if you can get involved with the Business and Society Conference or to go on an industry trek or something like that. There are opportunities to do that. Are there curriculum tracks specific to family business? I am going to punt that one down the road. I would have to look at our electives to see whether we offer courses in family business. And I know there are opportunities to study it through independent study. We do not have curriculum tracks, I should say that we are a general management curriculum. So in your first year, you do a core curriculum for the most part. And then in your second year, it's fully elective and you get to dive into the areas you want. So if you want to follow a certain track, you can. You can do an independent study. We've had people who've done first year projects regarding family businesses, but I would specifically have to look at our electives to see what opportunities there are curricularly in family business or small business. Okay, GMAT or GRE, do you use SuperScore? Good question. No, we don't. We will look at your highest quantitative and we'll look at your highest math, but overall, when we're looking at your highest score, we are looking at the highest score on one individual test taking. We do not frown upon multiple attempts, though, so do not feel like you should only take it once and get your very best score and that's it. What I will say is at some point you will hit kind of a point of diminishing returns. Don't keep taking it if it's not gaining you anything. Please move on to other parts of your application and submit the best application that you can. Okay, let's take a break for a moment. We have another poll that I don't think we've launched yet. Or have we launched that? I can't remember. I'm sorry, we have launched that poll. So never mind, we are going to take a break for a second so I can, there we go. So I can take a sip of water and we'll finish up with some final questions. If there's anything left, please let us know. And we'll get back to you in a second.
And Kristin, I can fill in the air here while you get a quick sip of water. I just want to say thanks again for the presentation today and remind all of our attendees that, because we are getting this question a little bit privately to me directly, this presentation has been recorded, or it's currently being recorded, I guess, and it will be posted to clearamit.com at a point to be determined, I would say usually within the week or so. And we will allow everyone to know when that gets published and how to go and retrieve that information. So again, if you were trying to follow along and there's a lot of really good information that you want to digest at a later time, you can definitely do that. And we'll definitely make sure that you know about how you can go about doing that. As far as the other questions, I see some additional questions still coming in, which is fantastic. There's actually a lot of really great questions. And the only reason if we skipped or didn't get to everyone's question is, we wanted to really try to focus on some of the questions that were appropriate for the larger audience. So, we'll continue to try to get to as many as we can. But if you do have specific questions, Kristin may be able to share with you guys how you can get those questions answered. I'm going to guess the answer is probably to contact the office. I don't know. My time in admissions would tell me that's probably the answer, but I'll let her explain. And again, thank everyone for joining us, and please continue to utilize clearadmit.com for all of your admissions advice, admissions tips, help on interviews, help on researching the different schools you are looking to attend, especially Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. And again, I'll allow Kristin to kind of wrap up how she would like, but I do want to thank her once again for sticking around, answering a lot of questions, a really strong presentation, really great information, and thanks again.
Well, thank you, Mike. It was our pleasure. And I'm happy to stick around to answer a couple more questions. Actually, I'm going to answer one more question and then tell you how to get any other unanswered questions answered. So let's do that. So one more thing I want to talk about is financial aid. So that's obviously a concern. Everybody wants to know, how am I going to pay for this? A couple things you can do right now, if you haven't already. And this is great, especially if you're thinking really long-term, but if you're not thinking long-term, you should be doing this too, is get your financial house in order right now. Get rid of credit card debt. This is not the time to go buy a new car. This is a great time to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success financially, because you don't want to get that admissions offer from your dream school and then feel like, I can't afford this. So please start thinking about that now. Now, in terms of financial aid and scholarship at Tuck, there are two different pieces of that. You should know that financial aid consists of scholarships and loans. When we're talking scholarship, every student or every applicant who is admitted is considered for scholarship, and it does not affect your admissions at all. That decision is made after your admissions decision is made. You go into scholarship committee, and the scholarship committee team, which consists of admissions and financial aid people, make decisions on scholarships. Our scholarships are merit-based. We assume almost everybody has need. So they are merit-based, and so it's really important that you remember that. If we need some additional information from you, we will ask, but in general, this is one of the reasons you fill out the application completely. We feel like we can get the information we need from your application. The second thing I want to tell you is that financial aid in terms of loans is a separate application process. And once you are admitted, you do need to pay attention to the deadline for the loan application. We have loans for both international and US-based students, so please remember that as well. Most schools do. The top tier schools have that opportunity, so I want you to make sure no matter where you're going, whether it's Tuck or someplace else, you pay attention to deadlines so you don't miss those important opportunities to get the loans and the financial aid that you need. So thank you so much. We're so excited that you came. Happy to answer more questions. If you do have additional questions, please email the admissions office at Tuck and let them know that you watched or heard the seminar here, webinar with Clear Admit, and we'll get your question answered. So thank you again to Mike, and thank you to all of you for coming. We really appreciate it. Take care.
All right, everyone, thanks again for joining us for today's session. You can see the information that has come across the chat. If you do not have chat available because you are on your phone or just can't access it at the moment, you'll be able to find this online as well. But the email address you can contact for additional questions to be answered is tuck.admissions@tuck.dartmouth.edu. So once again, tuck.admissions@tuck.dartmouth.edu. You can send any questions that you have there. There are a few other questions that we may be able to answer via typing to you. So if you are able to stick around and we can get to it, great. I can't promise that we'll get to all of them. We may have a few more minutes that we are able to spend on maybe one or two additional questions. But beyond that, please copy, paste, send your question in an email. We'll try to get to them either right now or via the email address. Thanks again for a great presentation, and please continue to use clearadmit.com to research your program, and good luck in the application process at Tuck School of Business. We hope to see you all as members of the Tuck program in the next year or so. So lots of luck, and we'll talk to you all soon.